the war in Ukraine, it just continues to cast such a long shadow.
Yeah.
And the material you shared, it really unpacks just how far-reaching the impact truly is.
Absolutely.
We're talking about these profound shifts in global politics, a really heartbreaking humanitarian crisis, and honestly, some fundamental questions about the future of, international relations.
Yeah.
So for you listening, if you're looking to understand that bigger picture, maybe get beyond the daily headlines, well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Absolutely. I think it's crucial, isn't it, to move past the sort of constant news cycle and really analyze the deeper interconnected consequences, the ones laid out in these sources.
Right.
And maybe a logical starting point, just given the sheer gravity of it all, is the immense human cost that comes through so clearly.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that. The humanitarian crisis.
Sure.
I mean, the sheer scale of displacement that the sources highlight it's almost hard to comprehend, isn't it?
It really is.
Millions forced to flee, either crossing borders into neighboring countries or becoming internally displaced right there within Ukraine.
Indeed. And, one of the articles pointed out something specific. The speed and the scale of that internal displacement, especially early on, it just overwhelmed the existing aid networks, like in a way we've rarely seen, which really underscores the need for, adaptable resources, maybe prepositioned for future crises.
That makes sense.
And it's not just about immediate shelter, is it? The sources also really emphasize the long-term challenges, people trying to rebuild their lives, coping with this profound psychological trauma.
Yeah, the trauma.
These wounds, as another source noted, they can have intergenerational effects. It's deep.
It's almost unbearable thinking about the civilians still caught in the conflict zones, too. Your readings, they detail these desperate shortages, basic things like healthcare, clean water, food.
Yeah, the basic.
And disturbingly, there are also those consistent reports, civilian casualties, alleged human rights violations. It just makes the need for future accountability absolutely paramount. Several sources really hammer that point home.
And what's particularly devastating, and something several articles focused on, is the impact on children.
Oh, definitely.
Their education is just thrown into chaos. And the psychological scars from experiencing that kind of violence, they're profound, potentially lifelong. These sources, they really stress how critical sustained international attention is and specialized support for these kids. They're uniquely vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's maybe pivot slightly to the geopolitical shifts, because it feels like the whole landscape of international relations is being reshaped right now.
It really does.
One thing that jumped out from the materials was the apparent strengthening of NATO.
That's a key point, yeah. Highlighted across the readings. Russia's actions have maybe counterintuitively acted as the significant unifying force for NATO in a way we haven't seen for decades. And we've also seen nations that were previously neutral actively reconsidering their, long-standing positions.
Like, it's huge.
It's a fundamental alteration to Europe's security architecture. The sources really emphasize that collectively.
It seems like a direct consequence, really. And the relationship between Russia and the West,
Yeah.
the sources paint a picture of it being at, a real low point, a level of tension that's just unprecedented in recent memory for many.
Yeah, a nadir is a good word for it. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the extensive sanctions imposed on Russia, that's a central theme in several documents.
For sure.
Now, the ultimate long-term effectiveness, how well they'll really work, that's still being debated within those sources.
Right, it's ongoing.
But they undeniably represent the significant rupture in, established economic and political ties, no question.
And as one of the pieces pointed out quite well, it's not just about Russia and the West, is it?
No, not at all.
The roles of other major global players, think China, India, they're incredibly complex here. The sources suggest their sort of carefully calibrated approaches and their future relationships with both sides, they're going to be pivotal in shaping whatever international order emerges from this.
That really underscores the interconnectedness of the whole global system, doesn't it?
Totally.
As the economic analyses detailed, this conflict in Ukraine, it isn't isolated. Its economic ripples are being felt, everywhere.
You're absolutely right. It's definitely not just a regional issue. The readings extensively covered the disruptions, global energy markets, food supply chains.
Huge disruptions.
Directly contributing to the inflation and the economic instability we're seeing in so many places, including, the rising cost of fuel and food that hits everybody's wallet.
And what's particularly revealing, I think, in those economic reports is how this conflict has exposed these kind of inherent vulnerabilities within our deeply interconnected global economy.
Yeah, the weak spots.
Several sources talk about this accelerated push now towards greater energy independence and more resilient food security systems. It's a direct response.
Makes sense. A wake-up call.
Exactly. And furthermore, the sheer scale of the eventual reconstruction needed in Ukraine, it's monumental. That's going to require sustained, coordinated international cooperation. That's a recurring point in the long-term outlook articles.
A massive undertaking. Okay, shifting gears again, maybe to the military and strategic side of things. The sources offer some pretty stark lessons emerging from the actual conflict, right?
Right.
What key insights did you pick up there?
Well, several of the military analyses highlighted the demonstrated effectiveness of certain technologies, like drones, for example.
Right, drones everywhere.
And the critical role of cyber warfare, alongside the kind of enduring importance of just robust logistics, getting things where they need to go.
Logistics are always key.
As a result, we're likely to see adjustments in military doctrines, shifts in defense spending priorities around the world. That point was emphasized in multiple strategic assessments provided.
And that ongoing debate, the really tricky one, around providing military aid and even the complexities around potential intervention.
Yeah.
The sources definitely presented a range of views on that sensitive issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's been significant support for Ukraine, obviously, but that ever-present risk of escalation of a wider conflict, that's a concern that just consistently surfaces in the readings.
Indeed. It's the elephant in the room, always. And another crucial aspect, highlighted across the board really, is the intense battle for narratives, the information warfare.
Ah, yes, the info war.
All sides are actively using media, online platforms, trying desperately to shape public opinion.
It feels like navigating this dense fog of information sometimes, doesn't it?
It really does.
The sources illustrate just how challenging it's become to figure out what's actually true amidst the sheer volume of, well, disinformation and propaganda. And this erosion of trust, in information sources generally. As several articles discuss, that has significant broader societal implications way beyond the conflict itself.
Yeah, and this brings up important questions, doesn't it, about media literacy, our individual responsibility, maybe, to critically evaluate the information we consume. That was touched on in some opinion pieces.
That's a really good point.
Looking towards the long-term horizon now, the consequences of this war are just profound. The reconstruction and recovery of Ukraine, as we mentioned, it's going to be an enormous task. It demands sustained international commitment, investment. That point comes up again and again in the future outlook analyses.
And, one source put it quite eloquently, arguing that this shared experience, this conflict and resilience, it's likely going to shape Ukrainian identity and national consciousness for generations.
Absolutely. It forges a nation in many ways, tragically.
Yeah.
And on a global scale, as the broader geopolitical analyses suggest, this conflict really forces us to grapple with these fundamental questions about international law, What does sovereignty truly mean in such an interconnected world? And how can we actually strengthen international mechanisms for preventing and hopefully resolving future conflicts like this? Big questions.
So drawing it all together then, it's just abundantly clear from all this material that the war in Ukraine is so much more than a regional conflict. Its tendrils, they reach across human lives, global politics, the economy, military strategy, even, as we just discussed, our understanding of information itself.
It touches everything.
And as we've explored through these sources, the repercussions, they're going to continue shaping our world for years, probably decades to come.
And this whole situation, as illuminated by all these diverse perspectives in the readings, it really serves as a stark reminder, doesn't it, of the inherent fragility of peace.
Yeah.
And the indispensable role of international cooperation in trying to tackle such complex global challenges. We can't do it alone.
Absolutely. And maybe for you listening, having heard this deep dive, it just underscores that vital role that, informed awareness and critical thinking play in trying to understand events of this magnitude. Thanks for bringing these crucial insights to light today.